busy day.
I can't get you a step in tolling.
I bet you're good.
Trust me, I still save 70 pages all the time.
I bet you do. I bet you do.
Message with it.
Some type of, something that's available, and I don't know whether I need it or not. No, it's just
It keeps popping on me too. Sometimes they'll give you like 5 things in a row. Just ignore whatever it says to cancel.
Reading on it last night, pop up just every 2 seconds, and pop up the people that
Got
pop
my
up.
pillow and everything.
Ready to go.
I'm bad
Whatever it
about
takes,
putting my
right?
You never know where you put your fingers, so it'll cost something to be on my screen.
Every now and then, I get to employ someone here that don't want to be.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
trying to find how to get back where I need to be.
That's, I had the same problem.
In sequence.
Well, I'm ready to go if you're ready to go.
I don't think so. Yeah, right there.
Everybody's ready? Okay. We welcome you to this regular meeting of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for August the 16th of 2016. I'll ask you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. Mike Woodard, have you got any baseball players to be introducing tonight? They were not. All right. Well, we just want to say how proud we are of these teams and the continued. They're kind of building a legacy, and we kind of like that too. I'll tell you, there's a lot to be proud of, and we appreciate all of the involvement of course, the kids and their parents and family, and the coaches, and of course our Parks and Rec people as well, and we appreciate all that's been involved in that, and the progress that they've made, and what that does for our community, and for holding our community up for what's right and what's good, and seeing things that are going well. So congratulations on what's going on. Next item is the consideration of the minutes from the last board meeting on July 19th. Is there a motion?
I'll move.
Second.
All right. Is there any discussion? Yes, sir, Mr. Sneed.
I don't have the minutes in my agenda. It was actual agenda, so it wasn't in here to review. And I won't postpone it for us to review.
Well, is it in there and it just supposedly on file in there?
Well, we hadn't had
If you
time to
want, if
review
you
it.
haven't had time to look at it, it's fine. Just make a motion if you want to defer it.
For approval of minutes.
Second to that?
Second.
All right. Any discussion on the deferral? Favor the deferral? Vote aye when your name is called. If you oppose, vote no.
Snyder. Aye. Cornell.
Aye.
Gregg. Sneed. Trotter.
Aye.
Head.
Yes.
Hubbard.
Aye.
Pass 7-0.
It is deferred. And now we have a public hearing on first in regard to ordinance 16-15, which would amend our parking regulations, et cetera, enforcement and whatever, as we have discussed in several meetings, that were asked for by the merchants downtown to try to see that there is sufficient turnover in parking places where everybody has a chance to get to the stores that are on Main and around the square, et cetera. Things are going very well in our downtown area. but parking is always crucial to that, even though there's a lot of off-street parking. The on-street parking is never fully enough, so this is an effort to try to make that more accessible, more available to those who are wanting to shop downtown. Does anyone wish to speak to this matter? Hearing none, then we move to part 2 of the public hearing, which would amend the fiscal 2017 annual budget by amending the general fund budget. Is there any comment from anyone in the audience on that matter? Hearing none, we move now to the legislative portion of the agenda, and the first item is 2.1. This ordinance is a third and final reading. This ordinance would establish fees for the rental of the football field at Martin Luther King Jr. Park as set forth in Exhibit A. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second. Any discussion now? Ask the roll be called.
Hubbard.
Aye.
Sneed.
Aye.
Cornell.
Aye.
Trotter.
Aye.
Snyder. Head.
Yes.
Gregg.
Aye.
Pass 7-0.
All right, we move to 2.2. That is another third reading, and this ordinance is 16-12 and amends the section pertaining to the maintenance of fire hydrants. Is there a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion on this matter as it's considered for the third and final time? Hearing none, we'll call the roll.
Head.
Yes.
Cornell.
Aye.
Trotter.
Aye.
Snyder.
Aye.
Gregg.
Aye.
Hubbard.
Aye.
Sneed.
No.
Pass 6-1.
Okay, 2.3 is also a third and final reading. This is on ordinance 16-13, which would rezone approximately a half-acre lot on the Sean Lehman Grimes property, which is on fronting South Main Street and is adjacent to a parcel owned by the said gentleman on US 431 as well. And this would change it from R40 residential to CS commercial services. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second? Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the roll.
Trotter.
Aye.
Hubbard.
Aye.
Head.
Yes.
Snyder.
Aye.
Sneed.
Aye.
Gregg.
Aye.
Cornell.
Aye.
Pass 7-0.
All right, we move now to 2.4 at the top of the next page. This is a first reading. Is there a motion and a second that this be considered?
So moved.
Second.
All right, I'll ask our city clerk to read this ordinance now as required on first reading.
Ordinance 1614, an ordinance amending the City of Springfield zoning ordinance regulating building exterior design standards within the corporate limits of City of Springfield, Tennessee, to provide increased design regulations to facilitate the creation of an attractive and harmonious community, to protect property values, and to further economic development. Whereas TCA sections 137201 through 137210 delegate the responsibility to local governmental units to adopt regulations designed to promote the public health, safety, and general welfare of its citizenry, the Springfield zoning ordinance currently contains design standards for commercial development for materials used on the exterior walls. And whereas the historic downtown redevelopment overlay district is added to increase design standards for historic area of the City of Springfield, including review of exterior colors, and to recodify the sections of the zoning ordinance for the purpose of inclusion of the overlay district. And whereas the Springfield Regional Planning Commission is designated as the City Design Review Board as required by Tennessee Code annotated 654-133, and granting review and approval authority to the Community Development Department in the same manner site plans are approved. And whereas the City of Springfield Planning Commission has reviewed this proposed ordinance amendment on August 4th, 2016 and recommends its passage, now therefore be it ordained by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen of Springfield, Tennessee as follows. Section 1, the City of Springfield Zoning Ordinance, Chapter 8, entitled Supplementary District Regulations, Sections 11-809 Sidewalk Cafe Overlay Zone for City of Springfield is hereby amended by rescinding certain sections or paragraphs in their entirety and substituting new sections or paragraphs and creating Chapter 8, Section 11811 to accommodate a prior duplicate Section 11809 wireless communications towers and antennas in its entirety to read as set forth in Exhibit A attached. Section 2, all ordinances, resolutions, and policies in conflict herewith are hereby rescinded to the extent of the conflict only.
All right, you've heard the reading of the ordinance. Any discussion?
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Hubbard.
Paul, go ahead. I'll give you.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. As you know, at the last meeting, staff informed the board that we were going to take the proposed ordinance to the Planning Commission for review and get their input, and they have done so, and they have recommended a more tightly defined area, which is fine. It's a good start. I did want to tell you that the new defined area is on page 1 of the exhibit, item 2, and it is as the Planning Commission has recommended. You have a memo from Grant with regard to what the staff recommendation is on this, but I think personally, if Planning Commission is comfortable for this, it's a good place to start. We can always expand it later on if that's your desire. Would like it to have a little broader, but the thing is, we need input from everybody, and the input's been made. I think it's a reasonable input. So let me just read this. The HDRO district is hereby outlined to encompass the following area and all properties that border the following streets. At the southeast corner, the intersection of Central Avenue and Hill Street, west along Central Avenue to South Main Street, north on South Main Street to Fifth Avenue West, and Fifth Avenue West to Hill Street South back to Central Avenue. So it is a tighter defined area.
All right, Mr. Hubbard, you're on the Planning Commission.
Not trying to sound redundant. Paul said some of the same thing I said, but we definitely hashed it out. And thank Grant for his expertise. And one thing that we really were very impressed when he showed us what we could become. He had those excerpts of those different type of buildings. We could sit in those condemned buildings and stuff. But the Planning Commission feels that this would be attractive, and this may conjure up some local development money to try to get us on the right start.
All right, Mr. Sneed?
Yes, Paul, from your statement regarding the revised boundaries, from what source did you collect the information that was just described in these boundaries? What source did you go to?
Mr. Green.
Mr. Green? Because I was at the meeting, and this is not the boundaries that was made motion, amended, and passed by unanimous. It was around the square, down Main Street, and to Central, and then the little leg of Bats from Main to Central. It was not going over 2 blocks east of Hill Street.
I don't think it does.
Well, I mean, because you're looking at it as it was told to you by Mr. Green, but I was at the meeting and heard the motion and amendment, and it's as what I just described around the square. Just
Grant, you want to come to the podium, please? Grant Green is our Planning and Zoning
In our challenge.
Director. Mr. Sneed, I was not at the meeting because I'm not a member of it. Grant, you want to go, you've heard Mr. Sneed's statement. You want to react to that, please?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I understood it at the Planning Commission meeting, it was, the defined boundary was I know Hill Street was mentioned, Central was mentioned, Main was mentioned, and Fifth was mentioned. That was the boundary that as I understood it. However, if the board wishes to vote on a different boundary, that's more than okay. Y'all can make a motion to change the boundary as you see necessary, but I think that was our staff's understanding of what was voted upon, and obviously if you all feel that that's not the boundary, then we can.
Brandon, can I, it's 2 blocks wide, basically from Hill to South Main. And then it's the width goes again from Fifth Avenue West over to Central.
Yes, sir.
That's That's pretty
significant.
tight. That's a big difference from what staff recommended.
Yes, sir. And I think that's one of the things too, you know, it does bring it in. It doesn't include Memorial Boulevard, and that was one of the staff's main recommendations. However, I think that is, you know, as the Planning Commission had recommended, that's for the amendment, that will work, if that be their wishes. And one of the things too is, you know, it is very tight right now with the amendment. There's very little area. It's really more of a historic preservation district at this point as opposed to redevelopment, because we won't see a whole lot of redevelopment within that area. And but it still is it's a good ordinance in terms of what we can within that area work with and have some standards within that.
Grant, can I ask you a question? Everyone's got a map in front of them. And you've got the red district, which is, I assume, the original district recommended by staff. And then the blue boundary is the new district represented by the Planning Commission. So you say it's pretty tight. It's basically in the historic downtown district rather than Memorial Boulevard and other places.
In the overlay boundary amendment, what you have here is what we voted on. You are correct, and this is correct. This is exactly what we voted on.
The maker of the motion at the Plan Commission is in the audience if the chair would like to have him comment on what's being presented tonight, because the maker of the motions here is, I'd like to ask him if is this what he thought he was conveying to his board that they approved.
That's fine.
All right. Mike, you made the motion. Could you come up to the podium?
Copy of the map there.
Map right there. Is that the boundaries contained in the motion that you made?
The amendment I made for these boundaries, after we saw the big boundary, the amendment we made was Fifth Avenue around the square, straight down Main Street to the north side of Central Avenue and taking in that little piece of Bass Boulevard. That was the motion we voted on. That was, 'cause we went over it 2 or 3 times. No, these other streets were mentioned, but we didn't take them in that motion.
But my understanding, I thought we were taking that little tight.
We got it tight, but we didn't take in Hill Street or Willow Street. It was straight down Main Street, both sides, to the north side of Central Avenue.
In the discussion,
Oh, we discussed a lot of things, but I'm talking what we voted on.
in the discussion, I think they fell within, understand me, voting on the amendment.
Mr. Allen,
I
Mr. Allen, when we had the vote, he went back over it again. Is that what we're voting on? Yes. It was straight down Main Street, the square area up here, Fifth Avenue part of it, this side, and the north side of Central, and the little dog leg of Bass Boulevard. That's all we encompass in this overlay. That's what the Planning Commission voted on. We didn't take in Hill or Willow Street.
In light of confusion and the absence of the minutes from the other meeting, and also I'm waiting on Chris Trauber at the Register of Deeds, not Register of Deeds, but Tax Assessor's Office to give me the names and addresses of everyone that would be affected. Just like any individual, if we want to do some rezoning or something change, we're required as individuals to notify every neighbor that borders your property. I thought, you know, as a city government, and I haven't seen not one word in the media about all of this, letting people know what is about to be passed on them. I was going to try to contact these property owners and let them know because it affects them. And I'm waiting on the name and addresses, like I said, from Chris Trauber to get that, notify them. But in light of absence of notification that I'm trying to do, in light of the mix-up and the lack of minutes, I'd like to make a motion to defer this for Grant Green to review a little closer.
Second.
All right. Any discussion?
I go along with what we have. So I'm gonna go along to defer, but yet I'm still fighting for what we already have.
All right, we're going to vote on the deferral. Motion has been made and duly seconded. If you favor the deferral, vote aye when your name's called. If you're opposed, vote no.
Cornell.
Aye.
Snyder.
Aye.
Hubbard.
Aye.
Trotter.
Aye.
Sneed.
Aye.
Gregg.
Aye.
Head.
Yes.
Pass 7-0.
All right, next is ordinance 16-15. This is a second reading. This is item 2.5, and this is the parking ordinance. Had the public hearing. There was no public comment tonight on that matter. Act on this at this time. Is there a motion?
So moved. Get on.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion?
Got a question for Alan. We discussed at the last meeting, last month, about some type of handicap exemption or something. What did you find out?
I have researched that and went through our consultant, and he says there is some required. However, you can't put them in like you got at the courthouse. They had to have an 8-foot parking space and a 5-foot area to get out. So you can only put two at a spot, and you have to have a ramp that comes up. I don't know if we have anywhere that has that room to do that down there.
But the side of the square, which is actually 6th Avenue, is that about the only place that would work?
That's straight-in parking. You can do it there, but they
you
do have
can't-
a detail. He sent me a detail. I'll show that to you eventually when I get time, but you'd have to have 13-foot parking is what it amounts to. 5-foot spot, and then you got to build a ramp up onto the highway. And they have some in Nashville that show that.
My concern is people that work in the area that may be handicapped, that it would be a burden on them to comply with a 2-hour time limit. So if you had handicap parking, would the 2-hour time limit apply?
Couldn't answer that. I wouldn't think it would, but I don't know.
For that?
Well, it certainly needs to be considered. Or if you want to defer, looks like we're doing a lot of that tonight. It's called kicking the can on down the pipe, I believe.
Well, we probably don't need to defer this.
Or we can simply amend it.
We need to, I'll offer this amendment that would, that we allow for handicap parking in the downtown area, and that those spaces be exempt from the 2 hours.
Fair enough.
I can go along.
Is there a second
Second.
to that? All right. We have a motion, an amendment, a proposed amendment. It's been duly seconded. You've heard it. Any discussion on that amendment? Hearing none, call the roll on the amendment, please.
Hubbard.
Aye.
Sneed.
Aye.
Cornell.
Aye.
Trotter.
Aye.
Snyder.
Aye.
Head.
Yes.
Gregg.
Aye.
Pass 7-0.
All right, now we're back on the main motion. Is there any discussion further on that?
Yes, Mayor.
Yes, sir, Mr. Smith?
This question is to the chief of police. I've noticed now that we've got the handicap part of it, was that going to be for just something hanging in the window, or is it going to have to be on the license plate, Mr. Head?
I don't know the difference.
That's a question for you. What's the difference? Because I know people who have a deceased family member and that thing stays in their window fraudulently. And I see people bounce out of their car and run into something that look like they're in better shape than I am. Now, how do you combat those type things?
The way that you do that is that the permits are issued to individuals, not to cars. So what you do is you stop those people that are so healthy that are bouncing in there, and you stop them and you see if the permit matches the person. My wife has a handicap permit. I don't park in handicap parking, but she has the permit. We just leave it in the car. But it actually goes with the person. If we see somebody and there's a question, we see if they match up to the permit.
There's a way to fight the fraud that's in that.
Yes, there is.
Any other questions?
Comment.
Go ahead,
I
sir.
mean, I'm entitled to have one of those, but since I don't want to take off my particular license plate as a Vietnam veteran, I will not get it. That might be the case for a lot of other people.
Other comments? Hearing none, let's call the roll on the main motion as amended.
Snyder. Aye. Cornell.
Aye.
Gregg.
Aye.
Sneed.
Aye.
Trotter.
Aye.
Head.
Yes.
Hubbard.
Aye.
Pass 7-0.
All right, we move to 2.6. This is a second reading, which would amend the 2017 budget for the city by amending certain items in the general fund. Is there a motion now on that? And a second?
Second.
Discussion. Hearing none, please call the roll.
Head.
Yes.
Cornell.
Aye.
Trotter.
Aye.
Snyder. Aye. Gregg.
Aye.
Hubbard.
Aye.
Sneed.
Aye.
Pass 7-0.
2.7 is also a first reading. Let's get a motion and a second, and then Stephanie will read that for us. Motion.
So moved.
I hear the second. All right, Stephanie.
Ordinance 1617, an ordinance amending the City of Springfield zoning ordinance, section 11307, adding contractor and professional offices indoor to commercial activities, amending section 11604 to include contractor and professional offices indoor as a permitted use within the MRO multiple residential and office district, and amending section 11605 to include contractor and professional offices indoor to the CS Commercial Services District as a conditional use to read as set forth in Exhibit A attached. Whereas TCA Sections 137201 through 137210 delegate the responsibility to local governmental units to adopt regulations designed to promote the public health, safety, and general welfare of its citizenry, the Springfield zoning ordinance currently contains permitted uses within each zoning district, and whereas the City of Springfield Planning Commission has reviewed this proposed ordinance amendment on August 4th, 2016, and recommends their passage. Now therefore be it ordained by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen of Springfield, Tennessee as follows. Section 1, the City of Springfield zoning ordinance, Chapter 3, entitled Use Classification, Section 11307, Commercial Activities for City of Springfield is hereby amended by adding Section U, adding contractor and professional offices indoor in Section A, principal permitted uses and structures of Chapter 6, Section 11604, multiple residential and office districts, and adding contractor and professional offices indoor in Section C, conditional uses of Chapter 6, Section 11605, commercial service districts to read as set forth in Exhibit A attached. Section 2, all ordinances, resolutions, and policies in conflict herewith are hereby rescinded to the extent of the conflict only.
All right, you've heard the reading of the proposed ordinance. Any discussion or comment?
Now, we certainly elaborated and recommend this to the board.
Right,
Planning
sir.
Commission. Correct, sir?
Other comments? Call the roll.
Trotter.
Aye.
Hubbard.
Aye.
Head.
Yes.
Snyder. Aye. Sneed.
Aye.
Gregg. Cornell.
Aye.
Pass 7-0.
We move now to 2.8, which is a resolution requiring a passage just or consideration only one time. This would declare certain property as surplus and authorize the disposal of such. Motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Mr. Nutting.
Thank you, Mayor. Had a letter came in from the city of Orlinda interested in some of the surplus vehicles. So I'm just want to make sure that I would have the authority from the board to negotiate a possible sale with the city of Orlinda for one of the surplus vehicles that they requested. Just want to let you know that I would like to do that and want to make sure that when you pass this resolution.
All right.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
years ago, we did something like that.
We have done
Yeah, we've
this
done it before.
Yes. I don't remember the particular entity that purchased it, but yes, we've tried to help
It's the city.
et cetera. We have a motion on this yet?
Ready for vote.
Any discussion now on this?
Do we need to approve what he's requesting authority to do?
resolution declares certain property as surplus and authorizing the disposal. I think, Paul, do you feel like you need an amendment, or is that covered?
No, the city manager is authorized to dispose of such property as prescribed by state law.
No amendment needed then.
As long as you know what's going on, then I'm happy with that.
All right, let's call the roll.
Sneed. Cornell.
Aye.
Hubbard.
Aye.
Gregg. Head.
Yes.
Snyder. Trotter. Pass 7-0.
Move now to the administrative portion of the agenda, and the first item is the monthly consideration of the wholesale fuel cost adjustment by TVA and our electric rates. Gardner? No change.
About that.
I can't raise any cane then, can I? All right. Do I have a motion?
Move for approval of that one.
Second? Second. Discussion? Call the roll, please.
Cornell.
Aye.
Snyder. Hubbard.
Aye.
Trotter. Sneed. Gregg. Head.
Yes.
Pass 7-0.
Now, the 3.2 is the adjustment, monthly adjustment of gas rates by the gas department. Mr. Riddle? Sounds like that Robert's got you this time.
Yeah, he got me this month.
Well, you're saving a little face. That's all right. And right now, we're not buying, most people are not buying a lot of gas. We can hope you can do better between now and December.
Right. Unfortunately, the market right now is
Okay.
Mayor,
All
I just left Caldwell County, Texas, and we're crying. There's no moving oil or either gas.
All right, you gonna make a motion we approve?
I make a motion that we approve it.
Is there a second to that? Second? Second. All right. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Snyder. Cornell.
Aye.
Gregg. Sneed.
Said aye.
Okay, sorry. Trotter. Head.
Yes.
Hubbard.
Aye.
Pass 7-0.
All right. Our next item, 3.3, is a report from our city engineer, David Brewer, on the status of the Branchford Community Center Gymnasium demolition project. I know there are a lot of people in the room tonight who are interested in this. This is not a public hearing, but it is a matter in which we are going to consider what our engineer has said and perhaps give the alderman an opportunity to have an on-site visit of that property so that we can determine what to do in the future with this. The city has invested money in that particular portion of the building that is being discussed tonight, and in terms of a roof, in terms of air conditioning, et cetera. So we have an investment in that over a period of time. We want to make sure we make the right decision on this. So without further ado, David, if you will come to the podium, and you're going to do a PowerPoint on this?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I have a PowerPoint that I would like to show you, gentlemen and ladies.
I guess we did.
These first few photographs that I want to show the board and those in attendance, these photos were taken in 2005. This is the gymnasium itself. As you can see, the floor had become in disrepair. This is the southern wall of the gymnasium. This is the stage right over here. Stage, once again, this is the north wall of the stage right there. At this time, there was probably about 60% of the asbestos-containing material ceiling subdeck that was left in the building in the gymnasium at the time. This is from the north side of the gymnasium. As you can see, the trees that were growing in the gymnasium floor area at that time. If you go to Google Earth right now, you can see that before the demo started, that the canopy of the trees was actually through the top of the gymnasium roof structure. This was where we started. We wanted to save the middle section of the Bransford High School. This is where the after-school program takes place. We had chosen to delineate this project down along the south wall of the gymnasium, up along the west wall of the gymnasium, and across the south wall of the stage area. During the demolition, this north wall that was holding up the slab that is the stage, the concrete slab that is the stage, and a portion of this east wall collapsed, causing the slab to fall to the second level, and in the process, severely damaged this wall right here. When this failure took place, the contractor was working on this corner of the demo project. This is beginning of the project. The structure came down very easily. There was no real structural integrity to the walls at all, other than the roof superstructure that was holding it all together. This is where we're at. I've asked the contractor to stop work. He's cleaned up the debris, and has prepared the site to move forward if the board wants us to continue with this part of the demolition. As you can see, this is the wall that was supposed to stay. Second floor, first floor, the wall completely collapsed. In the process, the roof structure collapsed as well. This is a better shot of that bleacher area. We still have to remove this area if we move forward. We've talked to a structural engineer, Michael Vines. He came in on Thursday, and he's going to give us a full report of what can and cannot be done with this wall. I wanted you to see this in the fact to talk about the shape of the material of the concrete blocks in this wall and in all of this exposed walls. These strings, for lack of a better phrase, are not strings, they're conduit. They're electrical conduit coming out of this breaker box here. And they ran up and they were attached to the last truss on this wall. Normally when you pull a truss away like that, the conductors, the electric wire, will go ahead and stretch and break. These concrete blocks were so far gone that just pulling the truss away caused all those blocks to shear away. And what you see there behind that is the brick fascia on the other side of the wall. This is the demising wall that we chose to try to save. Once again, this is the wall we wanted to save. Slab caused this when the slab fell, it caused the upper floor wall to fail. Failure of this roof system, failure of this corner. These pieces of metal right here are the rebar that came out of the beams of the floor when it collapsed. So, I mean, there was just a lot of give and pull away when that slab went back into that area. And this is a close-up of the roof subdeck system. It's composed of bulb tees and this subdecking material, which is an asbestos-containing material. You know, at a minimum, we're going to have to abate that section of the building for sure and get that removed. But that's where we're at. And so that's all I have on this particular.
Mr. Brewer, the section that the gymnasium was, and of course, there were some classrooms attached to that at one time. I think home ec was there and something else.
Yes, sir, that was all underneath those
All right,
bleachers.
and that's the older part of the building that still remained. Now, my recollection of it is after the fire in December of 1959, the school was, the section that burned was what was south of the gymnasium.
Well, south of the center section.
Of
The
the center.
gymnasium and that center wing were built in 1949, and then the south wing that you're talking about that burned in the late 50s and was rebuilt in 60, after 60, because the plans are dated 60, was built then.
All right, in that construction that was done, I assume, because I know the fire was in December of 59. I remember that. I went to the fire that night, remember what, generally was lost in it. But then it was replaced with what we call the center section that's there today, plus the perpendicular section that's at the south end. So it kind of makes it like a T there. Am I correct?
Yes and no, but
Give me the, okay.
Okay, where the after-school program meets now.
Yes.
Is what I have always referred to as the center wing. It and the gymnasium were built together in 1950 sometime. There was a section, look at the double doors at the front of the gym, of the Bransford High School. That section to the left was built after 1960.
All right, where the part that's being used now, is it the newest part of the building?
No, sir, it was constructed in 1949.
Okay, you're sure of that?
Yes, sir. It has the asbestos-containing material roofing subdeck in it.
All right. I'm going to now let board members ask Mr. Brewer any questions that you have of him regarding this information, which is, is something that you get into sometimes with demolition. When you're demolishing an older structure, and certainly it had to be done, it should have been done a long time ago, but it doesn't always go exactly like you want it to go. Go ahead, Mr. Hubbard.
Just a statement, and Mr. Brewer not get into, understanding the sensitivity, the historical, emotional field. This is a very tough call. As Paul said earlier, we tried over the years. And we invested a lot of money, a lot of time. So we want people to know that we're still sensitive. From your perspective, is there any way of taking down gently what's there and sort of reinforcing it in a cheap manner?
In a what manner?
Cost manner, that's a better word.
Okay. To very specifically answer your question, that is what Michael Vines, the structural engineer, is going to address. I do not know that there's any truly low-cost alternative to, we will take that wall down if this board continues and chooses to do so. We'll take that wall down. We'll take the bleachers off, but the women's restroom area is structurally unsafe at the present time. And because of the lack of facilities, codes administrator will not let that building become occupied. So to occupy that building, some sort of restoration of restrooms will have to be done. And
Can I safely say that the element of water did a whole lot of destabilization?
well, that would be my thought on it. Over the years, once the roof systems are penetrated and the water gets to the concrete block, you go through repeated freeze and thaw cycles during the winter, and that material just continues to become more and more brittle, and it loses its structural integrity. You saw where the demo was, where we were at. You saw where we got to the bleachers. You saw where we got to on the back end where we wanted to demise on that stage. The contractor had anticipated 2 weeks to do that work. They got to that point in 8 hours. That's how quickly that building just kept going and going and going. And so they were in that northeast corner or northwest corner. They were trying to stabilize that corner so that should anybody have gotten on the site after they left that night, that corner would have been high, so it wouldn't have fallen on them. And that when that corner came down, that was just enough to let that north wall go, that east wall on that stage go, the slab went, and then you saw the results.
I'll fight for it and I'm shut up, is how Director Woodard created a program that's second to none in the state of Tennessee. People need to know that. And the governor, his wife, and everyone is so proud of it. It's such an integral part of reshaping the lives of a very diverse population. And so I want to commend you, sister. And that's where my heart is, okay? I'll be quiet.
David, when this structural engineer comes out, is he going to look at just that center section, or is he going to look at that and the southernmost section as well?
Well, he's looking at that southern wall of the gymnasium to determine how we can, if it's structurally stable, and how we can lower it. He's also looked at that south wing, and we've already had a previous structural engineer look at that south wing. That south wing is in terrible, terrible shape. Will it fall tomorrow? No. But every day it gets closer and closer. You can see in some of the floors in there already that there is beam deflection, major stress, shear cracks. It's a real, the south wing is definitely a real concern to me.
But when you say that you're talking strictly of the part that's perpendicular to the main part, the center part, correct?
Yes, to the south of those double doors, to the south of those double doors. That it's closed off right now. But
Ann, I have missed you.
I just have a comment to make, and I know Mr. Brewer's just delivering the information to us. We have a lot of history there. I hope we can salvage something. We, the city, has put a lot of money into it. Our churches in our community have put a lot of money in, and us as individuals. So I hope there's something we can salvage and then build around that.
Bobby?
Now, I think it was understood that that south end was coming down anyway, and the gym was coming down.
Well, the south was not, the gym was the only thing that's coming down in this.
Yeah, but eventually the south end was coming down.
Yes, sir.
My question is, can that mill be saved?
I don't know the answer to that question. That's why we called the structural engineer in, who will give us options on that wall.
When are you going to have his answer?
Hopefully next week. But, as I stated in my memo, it's not going to be an inexpensive fix, more than likely, and it's going to be a time-consuming endeavor to stabilize that wall.
Well, either way it's done, I'm sure it's gonna cost a lot of money, but it needs to be done. I mean, I think the community wants it, and I think it's worth saving, no matter how much it costs, or, you know, whatever you do, it's worth saving, you know.
Well,
The community don't ask for a whole lot, but we deserve this.
Well, I just want to make sure that the board has all the pertinent information so that this board can make a well-informed decision. And part of my memo, I had asked the contractor, Bomar, to give me an opinion of probable cost to demo the whole building and to demo just the south wing of the building and leave the center section. And of course, you know, whatever this board decides to do is the direction that we will take, but I just wanted to get you that information.
I'm going to go around that. Now, on this end of the table, Mr. Bragg, do you have any comments, questions?
I just want to go out and physically see the site.
Mr. Sneed?
Mr. Chairman,
Observations?
I've been by there a few times. In the process of this demolition, I was,
You went by during the 8 hours then?
no, I was not there during the 8 hours, but I was there during the pre-bid of all the contractors, heard the architect. I know I'm going to remove the emotions out of this because what we deal with is finance and money. I'm going to remove the emotions. You said that you called in a structural engineer. Is that going to be at our cost or the Omar's cost?
Be at our cost.
Is there any responsibility of the contractor not following what we hired an architect prior to this being bid to ascertain and do some work? Can't remember, somewhere like $25,000 paid, or I can't remember to do whatever his professional services are about pulling this old building off of the new building to keep this from happening. So where is the responsibility in the work of the professional services that we hired to do this?
Well, we hired John Clark to write us up a set of specifications, and that's exactly what he did. We looked at where we needed to demise the project to try to save that section of the building that is in use. At no point did Mr. Clark, myself, or the contractor anticipate the poor structural quality of the existing wall materials.
Well, I mean, that's where mistakes come in, and that's why you hire professionals, and I'm just having a hard time swallowing the fact that this is trying to be pointed toward us to rectify when we hire professionals, and maybe they didn't have a big enough track hole where they could pick it off from the top instead of knocking the whole wall down. I mean, I'm not an engineer, but when you breach a wall that big from end to end, like what we just saw, instead of taking it around the perimeter and taking it down, you breach it, there's going to be some instability to it. I see that without being an engineer.